Let's talk about some movies. I'm Ryan Bueller, and welcome to episode 4 of the Beginner's Guide to Filmmaker podcast, where each month I pick a particular filmmaker, watch their whole filmography, then I record a crash course giving you an idea of who they are as a person, what kind of movies they make, what they do best, and what to expect when watching one of their films. Then I move on to a movie talk where I discuss all of their films spoiler-free and then spoiler-filled. Today, I am here with my boy Mikey.
Hey, yo.
And we're here to discuss the man of the hour, Damien Leone. His new film just hit theaters, and I am so excited to discuss that film and all of his other films. If you didn't know, he is the creator of the horror icon, Art the Clown. He has directed 2 short films, 4 features, All Hallows Eve, Frankenstein vs. the Mummy, Terrifier in 2016, and now Terrifier 2, which is in theaters right now. So, let's talk about who Damien Leone is as a person. He grew up in New York with a single mother who loves horror movies. She actually named Damien after Damien from The Omen, which I thought was pretty cool. From the age of 3, he would watch horror movies with his mom. She would drive him down to the video store and show him magazines like Fangoria, which showed how they did the effects in those movies. It kind of gave her a way out on showing a child these movies at that age, because by showing him these magazines and how they made the movie, it kind of showed him that these movies weren't real. He was fascinated by the process of how they made these movies. Growing up, he was an artist first. He loved to draw with his grandfather and originally thought he'd grow up to become a cartoonist. But growing up with these movies like Friday the 13th, Maniac, and Dawn of the Dead, Damien became a huge fan of Tom Savini, the guy who does the practical effects for those films. He found the film Scream Greats, which shows how Savini did those effects. He loved watching it and learning more and more from it. His mom actually brought him to Chiller in New Jersey, which is a horror con, which both me and Mikey here went to.
Good crap.
And we actually met Tom Savini at this convention and Art the Clown. So me and Mikey here actually had the wonderful pleasure of being able to meet in person Damien Leone and the actor David Howard Thornton, who portrays Art the Clown in Terrifier and Terrifier 2. And we got to meet Damien twice. And we got to meet David twice. And we met Art once.
Yes. Separate entity.
Absolutely. Because we were luckily enough able to do a in-costume photo op, which was extraordinary.
It was amazing.
Art the Clown choked Mikey here.
Yes.
Which is pretty amazing. And then I didn't even ask, but Damien just came over and just started choking me. And it just...
Come true.
Extraordinary experience. They were just so down-to-earth guys. They were really nice. All of the times we met them.
I felt like I could have asked them to do pretty much anything for that photo.
Yeah.
And they were just like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
So it is by far my favorite Comic-Con experience. They were just so great. When we met the whole cast almost of the first film. And almost, like, pretty much everybody there was really down to earth, really chilled.
Super nice.
Super nice. Like,
some people, we didn't even, like, ask for photos. We were like, oh, we just, like, signature, like...
Yeah,
that's okay. And they're like, no, let's take a photo anyway.
Like, it was really nice. It was a nice, what is it called? Thing of fresh air.
Breath?
Thank you. It was a very nice breath of fresh air to have. I can't believe I forget.
We're leaving that in.
Breath of fresh air. To be able to meet down-to-earth people who want to be there, who want to meet the fans, and are just great people. So, like, it adds so much when you rewatch these films. Like, these are made by good people, and it is a pleasure to support them and watch their movies. Like, Damien was nice enough. I got him to sign my Blu-ray copy, and I put it in my case a little too soon, and I smudged the signature. I walked right up to the table, and I told him what happened, and he was more than welcome to fix it for me. So, such a nice guy, and hopefully we're able to meet them again down the line.
We actually had a conversation with Damien about Terrifier 2 before it came out.
You're right, we did. We asked him about, like, what time frame. Like, we were just talking about how excited we were.
He was like, I'm not going to give you spoilers, but he just gave us a little bit of detail.
Yeah. And he was like, "It's hopefully it's coming out like 2022." He was like, "Hopefully end of the year and stuff." And
man of his word.
No, because we met him at the end of 2021.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Hopefully by next year."
Yeah.
So okay, so that's what it was.
Still man of his word.
Yeah, he made it, and I just want to watch. I want to watch Terrifier 2 again so badly. But yeah. Anyways, at this event, he found a whole kit on makeup. This kickstarted his love for makeup, and he went straight home and just started trying all these different things. He would put stuff on his friends and try to scare their parents when they got home. And watching them freak out and having the ability as a child to scare an adult, he really liked that feeling, and he would strive to achieve that feeling throughout the rest of his career. It gave him this sort of rush that he really liked. At first, it was never about making movies, but one day he borrowed a video camera and just started recording his different effects and makeup designs. Then he would come up with little stories to go along with it until he started to come up with ideas for movies. He took a film course back in college, but it wasn't really for him. He actually convinced his mom to take the money from the school and help him make a short film to be like his calling card. That would lead to the short film The Ninth Circle. Now, we'll go into detail in the movie talk section of his films up after that and so on and so forth. But let's talk about what kind of movies he makes. This is a paraphrase quote from one of the podcasts I listened to. He said, "I'm just a huge fan, and I try to remember what I like and what affected me when I was growing up with those movies." So, when you watch one of his films, you can see the influence of those classic 80s movies because he grew up with slashers and the love for horror, and he loves movies about swords and magics and medieval times. So you can see kind of these influences in his projects going forward. He makes movies almost as if these are those long-lost 80s films that we never saw, and they're just now coming out. It has that feel and look that you don't really get with movies nowadays. Up to this point, he hasn't made too much outside of the slasher genre, and with Art the Clown, he hasn't really branched out too much, but it's safe to say that he makes films like the ones he grew up with, kind of like Tarantino, which he's a big fan of. Definite warning when going into these movies is these aren't for the faint of heart, and starting off at his earlier work and going forward, his movies definitely start to get more and more violent, so just a warning right off the bat, just so you know. Also, going into one of his films, you're pretty much guaranteed that the film is going to consist of a lot of practical effects, makeup, costumes designed by him because that's his passion first over filmmaking. He does all of the makeup for his films with some people assisting him on some projects. But he is the head makeup person, he's the director, he's the writer, he's the editor, he's working all these different positions. So these films are his. When he decided that he was going to start making slasher films, he realized that people go into a slasher movie wanting to see the killer, not the boring character story that always gets forced in these slasher films for like the whole first act. He wanted his films to be like the last 15 minutes of those slashers. Shit hits the fan, the killer's there, and just death after death, which he definitely succeeds in when he comes out with his 2016 film Terrifier. But we'll get into that later. Also, something he wanted to face when making a slasher film, he and most audiences hate how when you go into a slasher film, you want to see the kill scene, you want to see the death, you want to see how creative the sequence is. But with these slasher films back in the 80s, you get usually off-screen kills, which are very frustrating. And if you do get a kill, it's like this 10-minute ordeal of building up this kill. We get about 3 seconds, then they cut away. And that's how, like 75% of slash movies are. And it's pretty frustrating. And I feel like it's really cool that he strives to change that with his films. His kill sequences are usually much longer, but he wants to really recoup that 80s feel of cutting away with the kills because they had to do that to avoid higher ratings when they were releasing the film. So he includes those cuts, but you still get a nice kill sequence. You still get to see more gore and violence, and it feels really rewarding watching this long build-up, and you actually are satisfied. So that's a big thing with his films. He likes to build tension. He actually has a very interesting style because with Art the Clown, all of the projects that he's done with Art are during Halloween time. So in those situations, somebody dressed up as a clown isn't as frightening. And because he's a clown, he's not as opposing as like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. He can go into ordinary locations and not be an immediate threat. And I think it's really interesting watching him play around with that. And he builds tension by going from humor and a comedic moment to this feeling of being uncomfortable. And then that leads to fear. And I think that's really interesting, and it's something we constantly get when Art the Clown is present on screen. Now, the biggest question that needs to be answered on these crash courses is, where is a good place to start with Damien Leone? I mean, it's like, usually it's like their first film, but it's not always the case. So it's like fun to kind of play around with where would be a good place for me to convince you to start. And do you have any opinion on this, Mikey? Do you have an idea of where you should start?
Terrifier,
the film, 2016?
Yeah, just the first film right off the bat.
It's a fair bet. It is like...
If that doesn't get you hooked, then you're screwed.
Exactly. I mean... Because what I was thinking, definitely a good pick. Now, I'm just like, for somebody who is really on the fence, they're like, oh man, maybe it's not for me. I think that the short Terrifier film, that's only like 23 minutes, you get a nice introduction to Art, you get some pretty cool sequences, and if after you're done watching it, you're not left with wanting more, you're not for this franchise.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I think it's easier to convince somebody to watch a 23-minute short than a whole movie. It's a little bit less of a commitment. But Terrifier, the film, you should watch. No questions asked.
If you don't like it, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. It is the peak of the slasher genre. And we are living in a period where you're watching a horror icon be born, crafted, and lifted up. And I'm so excited to see where it goes.
We were there from the beginning, man.
Word. Thank you very much for bringing me on this journey of watching Art the Clown go from a nobody to a king. Thank you very much. So I think that's everything I want to say for this crash course section. We're going to move on to our movie talk section because there is a lot that we got to talk about. We got a lot of thoughts on this new movie, Terrifier 2, and we can't wait. So hopefully this portion of the podcast was helpful. If you haven't seen a Damien Leone film, you definitely should go and watch them because there aren't that many, and Art the Clown is peak slasher, so go for it. So thank you very much for listening to this first portion of the podcast, and I look forward to having you guys listen to the movie talk section, and go check out the other crash courses I have on the channel. And you have a good one.